Hi, welcome. Just giving folks a few minutes to join us. And while folks join, I would just mention some of the Zoom functions, just for folks who are familiar and those who would like a refresher. Good morning or good evening, Betty. Also, if you could put in the chat where you're joining us from, that would be amazing. We love to see where folks are coming from, especially as some of you know and others who don't. This can get folks internationally, nationally. Just kind of nice to see where everyone's coming from. But yeah, so just some of the Zoom functions. If you're looking to send something in the chat, you can find that below at the bottom of your screen. Sometimes you can find it in the little three dots at the bottom. If you click more, and then that'll pop up. And then the mute button. And as folks who know and those who don't, this will be a space for people who do face racism on their everyday lives, a chance to actually use their voice and speak. We ask if you are white or do not face racism in your everyday life to please use the chat to interact with us, to show support, to show love, to show agreeance. I hope we just should create an open space. If you are needing live transcript, I think that's also can be found in the more button. And it should be enabled for folks. And yeah, I think those are all the Zoom functions that folks will need for tonight. But of course, if you have any questions, those of us facilitating tonight are Rox, Melody Lopez, Dawn Knight Thomas, Kelly Vallejo. Bio. Thank you. As well. And then there's also an ASAW NYS account. So if you have a question or you're confused or anything was made unclear, you are welcome to DM one of us and we can try to clear it up for you. And if not, we'll try to ask one of another folks and have them clear it up. But I'm going to pass it off to Melody to give us our land acknowledgement.
Hi, thank you, Rox. No, Melody and Matsiwa. My name is Melody Lopez. I'm Hopi Navajo and Pueblo. And I am doing the land acknowledgement today. So I am zooming in from often what's called Tucson, Arizona, which comes from Ali Chuksan, which is the Dana Atam word. And I am on the Atam Druid. I am on their traditional lands. This is also the tribal lands from the Pasco Yaqui tribe. And so when I say that, I'm not simply giving you the history lesson. What I'm telling you is at all times, I operate in respect, with responsibility, in relationship, and in reciprocity with the people of the land as well. As I work a lot with Dana Atam and Pasco Yaqui people, and I center myself, my social work praxis around their needs as well as the needs of others. So that's how I do my land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think next is Kelly.
Yeah, it's my name is Kelly. She ate what it's eating. Jonah ate in a bashing. This chini ate a shit. So, of course, he's in a he was out a sun. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Kelly Vayo, and I am from the Navajo Nation. I'm currently in Phoenix, Arizona. I am from the Bitterwater clan, born for the Second clan. My maternal clan is the start of the Red Street people, and my paternal clan is the Yakima Pueblo. Again, I am I'm participating from Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you.
you. Would you mind reading out the grounding for us?
Yes, thank you. So today's grounding is in regards to our town hall meeting. So for participation, BIPOC participants will be sharing stories. We ask that white participants listen because listening is a form of participation. This is a space of discomfort, and we are learning how to engage in dialogue and embrace discomfort. Also, we encourage participants to take care of themselves as they see fit. Please provide mental health resources specifically for BIPOC folks in the chat. Reiterate confidentiality. So please understand, do not share the names of agencies, supervisors, colleagues, coworkers, and clients for the protection of yourself and others. And things that we say might offend people here. So please be mindful. This is a brave space to have those conversations. Tensions will arise, but it's how we react and understand our own triggers. And also discomfort is growth. So various opinions on this topic. The point is to not argue, but to move forward with a common agreement over how NASA and YS should use or not use the term BIPOC in our graphics and social media, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And then I think Dawn's next with our principles for the community.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dawn Knight Thomas. What I'm going to read are the principles of our community for this evening. Recognize. We recognize that we must strive to overcome historical and divisive biases such as racism and sexism in our society. Acknowledge. We acknowledge that we are all systematically taught misinformation about our own groups and about members of other groups. This is true for everyone, regardless of the group. No blame. We agree to blame ourselves. We agree not to blame ourselves or others for the misinformation we have learned, but to accept responsibility for not repeating misinformation after we have learned otherwise. Respect. We agree to listen respectfully to each other without interruptions. Only one person speaks at a time. However, this does not mean we should ignore problematic statements. Information here, we believe in calling in rather than calling out. Both approaches are valid and can be done with care and respect, with the goal of helping each other learn. We acknowledge that we may be at different stages of learning on the content and discussion topics. Individual experience. We agree that no one should be required or expected to speak for their whole race or nation. We can't, even if we wanted to. Trust. Everyone has come to the table to learn, grow, and share. We all trust that people are doing the best they can. Excuse me. We all trust that people are doing the best they can. We all make mistakes and have had bad days. When these occur, let's challenge and encourage each other to do better. We acknowledge once again that we may be at different stages of learning on this topic. Share the air. Share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. If you have a tendency to dominate discussions, take a step back and help the group invite others to speak. If you tend to stay quiet, challenge yourself to share your ideas so others can learn from you. If you are exceedingly quiet, do expect that the facilitator may call on you in meetings to participate. only because we want to hear what you're thinking. We want to hear from you too. And lastly, not the experts. We are experienced facilitators, but we do not claim to be experts. We are here to help facilitate the process. Along with everyone in the group, we are here to learn. We also recognize that everyone has an opinion. Opinions, however, are not the same as informed knowledge, backed up by research. Depending on the topic and context, both are valid to share, but it's important to know the difference. To engage in deep learning, we will want to learn more toward informed knowledge and gain practice reflecting and speaking thoughtfully on difficult topics. And the last one is ask for help. It's okay not to know. Keep in mind that we are all still learning and are bound to make mistakes when approaching a complex task or exploring new ideas. Be open to changing. Be open to changing your mind and make space for others to do the same. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you, Dawn. I think, oh, welcome from Florida. I think we've had a chance for each facilitator to kind of speak. So I think it might not be super necessary to go and do introductions again. Okay, I'm seeing nuts. So first we kind of just wanted to center the quote. We know that this meeting was using the quote, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house," and then kind of tied to this idea of strength and joy. And so for those who don't know, this is originally a book title by Audre Lorde, where she kind of touches on the idea of the intersection between like feminism, like capitalism, like all of these like major topics, and then like how do we actually dismantle a system, and basically coming down to like it will never be with the master's tools, or never be with the tools that like were given to us from those in who have privilege. It always will come from the community, from the things that we find strength and joy and pride in. And when we get back to like those roots, we can start to really start dismantling the systems. And we thought it would be kind of a good topic to touch on, not only the things that like make us like angry and frustrated and upset, but also like where's the strength and community and joy that like we also hold as folks who have been marginalized as well. But we just wanted to kind of give a perspective. And then also, I think for those of you who've come to town halls, you might be familiar with Andrea, and she is well known for always saying this quote. So we kind of were like, oh, that's a gem. Let's take that, you know, and like use it here, and then like give some context as well. So if Andrea is here, definitely shout out, because you definitely are always, you know, monumental and definitely a great contributor to the town halls. But yeah, I'm gonna pass it over to Dawn to kind of get us into conversation.
Okay. So I'm about to ask a question for you to think about, and we can share our responses with one another. This question is, where do you find your strengths, your joy? Where does it come from? Where do you find it? All right, now I know some people have some joy somewhere, or talk about something in the past that's given you joy, or give you strength when you're going through a hard time. What gives you that strength? Like right now, for those of you in school, you may be going through final papers and all those great things. So what's helping you just to get over the edge of finals and everything that you have before you?
Kelly, I see your hands raised.
So for myself, I think what gives me strength and joy was being able to provide that support to my Indigenous community. Only specifically, I wanted to be a person that looked like me, to be able to understand what I'm going through. And so providing that support to my Indigenous community and being able to have someone who looks like them as well, to be able to understand where they're coming from. So that gives me joy and that gives me strength in regards to the profession that I chose, which is the social work profession.
Yes, thank you for that. And especially because you know your folks when you see them. So I'm Black. So I go to a conference and I look and it's a sea of white and only like maybe 5 Black people I see, I'm going straight to them because that's comforting for me to have that conversation. So when you go to the younger person or the person who may be a lower grade than you, well, if you're in graduate school, maybe they're in undergrad, and you're able to talk to them like that, you are able to give them, letting them know, look, I'm going through this. You see me doing this, you can do it too. And I'm here to support you. So it's so important for us to really do that with within our groups as well. And then if somebody is like, I grew up in the Bronx, so Latinos, if I see someone who's Latina or Latino and I can help, I'm going to do the same thing because I believe we need to help each other as much as possible and step out. So thank you for that. I love your glasses too. Anybody else?
I can go.
Okay.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Stephanie Left Hand. I live in Denver, Colorado. I identify as Taos Pueblo in Spanish, and I'm a fairly new practitioner. I've only been in practice for about 8 months now. Thank you. I would say very closely to Kelly's answer. I feel like being a new practitioner, something that gives me strength is being able to serve in that space of like visibility. Yes, like, because I'm not too far from my graduate experience, and that was a really difficult journey to walk. And what gave me strength throughout that time was kind of like with my undergrad journey, you know, questions around identity came up for me. I faced challenges around that. But I felt like what gave me strength through both of those experiences, and especially through my graduate experience, was often the talks that I had with family. And the one person I'm thinking of specifically is my uncle, who would tell me that, you know, you already have everything you need as an Indigenous person. We were already doctors, we were already astronomers, we already were social workers, we were bridge builders, we were storytellers, and this space is yours. So I think those were, I was very grateful to have a lot of encouragement and support from so much of my family, but those were the kind of conversations with my uncle that always helped me make it through difficult times in grad school. And so when I walked across the stage, you know, I walked not alone in that. I walked with my ancestors and I walked with family. And that's kind of how I see every accomplishment moving forward, or every challenge, is that like I'm not alone. I have ancestors who are with me, and I have stories that have told me how to navigate this, and I will be okay moving forward, whatever happens. So that's what gives me strength.
Thank you so much for saying that, because we do, if you believe in ancestors, which I also do, standing on the backs of our ancestors for the things that they have been able to accomplish. So, and they carved the road out, the pathways for us to move in our lives at this time. So thank you for saying that and including our ancestors in this conversation. Thank you. Anybody else?
Pilar, I see your hands up.
I'm still a student, so I'm s- it's it's still it's not easy, especially when you're first gen everything. But for me, what gives me the strength and the joy and the conviction um, are my parents, because in spite of the fact that neither of them were as privileged as I am to get further than an elementary school education, they have always supported me. And even though they might not know what I talk about or what I refer to, they are my biggest cheerleaders, and they believe in me. And when I want to like give up, they're like, no, you come from like you come from warrior blood, and you are a fighter, and you are going to get back up, and you are going to believe in yourself, and you can do this because we believe in you and we know it. And so for me, it's my mom and dad.
And how powerful is that? Wow. If that doesn't just make you feel so supported and loved. And basically we're saying you can do this. You have to. You're first generation. Come on. You got others behind you who are going to be coming, following your path. So that is wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Felix Race.
Hi, everybody. I want to echo the sentiment about like ancestors and family being really supportive. And I think that is incredibly important. And I think in just my perspective, I also want to offer, at least for me personally, I am not connected with my family. So it's hard to have that support, but the reason why I'm sharing that is because I think I draw strength from community, right? So like, I'm not speaking to my Filipino mother at this moment, but I am speaking to my Filipino community and my friends. And like, I think it's really important to build community, even when there's like, there's not access to it. Like, I truly believe like part of the reasons why I feel disconnected to my ancestors is because of colonialism, because of white supremacy, because of the mental trauma that has been enacted on my people. And I want to connect to folks in the ways that I can, even if that means that, I can't talk to my mother about those things, right? And I think in my practice, I'm a psychotherapist, also relatively new. I graduated in 2021. So I'm really exploring the ways in which my practice is bringing me joy. And I'm actually quite surprised, like, it's work, right? But it also feels so fulfilling and wonderful. And I think the things that make me feel very wonderful, especially, are the times when I can connect to clients who are also in need of, like, where I'm having specific conversations around colonialism, around white supremacy, around joy about their community, about our race, about finding joy in the face of systemic oppression. And I think like those conversations that I'm having with my clients, a lot of them, they can't have them with their parents, right? Most of my clients are queer. Many of them are disconnected from their families. And it feels really, really wonderful and joyous to be able to facilitate those conversations within the mental health therapy space so that people can find healing. And like, as much as it's healing for my clients, it's also healing for me, to have those kinds of conversations. And like, we talk about vicarious trauma as therapists, as social workers, but there's also like vicarious joy. And I've been really experiencing that recently. So I've been feeling really good about that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Felix. Wow. And imagine your clients, how they can feel they can come to you and have these discussions, and you hear them, you hear what they're saying. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Felix, I didn't know you graduated. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I had no idea. Maybe we'll move to the second question.
I am so ready for it. I'm excited about the second question. As we come together as a group and we kind of talk about the theme that's going on, and something that brought some joy and strength actually to social work practice was talking about cultural competence versus cultural humility. And people are really using the term cultural humility, they're throwing it around and not really understanding that it's like 4 really solid transformational principles. And the third principle of cultural humility, you know, I'm going to put it in the chat. And it's seeking beneficial, I love the wording in this, beneficial, non-paternalistic relationships with community members. It's great because it touches about what Felix was talking about. And seeking and honoring the expertise that resides in the communities we service. And originally, cultural humility was created by doctors, talking about the doctor-patient dynamic, but it really translates to social work really well. And so in looking at that and thinking about, that's really strong. What a statement, you know, non-paternalistic relationships and honoring the expertise of our communities. Our question we'd like to pose to you is, how do you all seek and honor the expertise of the communities and populations you serve? And, you know, you can go big or small on this. You can think about individual clients. You can think about the community. You can think about this structurally. You can think about this in many different ways. All right, Cynthia.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm sorry, my internet on my computer's not working, so I'm on my phone, but sorry if it sounds funny. But yes, so I have a small private practice just for the last year. And so I do serve clients, you know, many different cultures and populations. And so just yesterday, I was talking to a client, and she was from one of the African countries. And she was telling me a story about her home and her family. And she kept saying throughout her story how, oh, you probably wouldn't understand, or you probably wouldn't know because you're American, you know. And so I had to stop her and say, listen, this is a teaching moment for me as well. I'm here as your therapist, but I'm open to learning. I don't know everything. Please tell me. And so she was happy that I even was interested, you know, in hearing, you know, about her family culture and family. And so I think that brought her joy, and it brought me joy knowing I'm, you know, I'm here, I'm the student and the teacher, you know. So on a one-on-one basis, even on that level, you know, that's a principle that, you know, I hold dear to my heart, just always being teachable, learning. So yeah, so that's just a little small example. That was the first thing I thought about. So thank you.
Well, that's a wonderful example.
Absolutely.
You know, we can't all be 1,000% competent in every single individual and community that we come around.
Mhm.
Even as Indigenous peoples, there's like some 573 tribes in the United States. And I guarantee you, I do not understand the culture, the language, the traditions of all of those peoples. And so, but that ask, that's so rich and beautiful because you're really, that's that honoring piece. And that's wonderful for someone to feel honored when they come in. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you.
So this one looks like it's a real stumper. And, you know, Felix, take it away.
I try not to overspeak, but I was thinking about something that I do personally in my practice, and that is like naming race and talking about it. I find that like we at least most of the people in my agency are white, so I'm like it's not amazing, but I I find that we're not talking about race more and the impacts of race. So I'll talk one of my intake questions, because again, I'm doing clinical work, is always like, what are identities that are important to you that you feel are important for me as your therapist to know and understand? And that, you know, often brings up questions of race, gender, and sexuality. But, you know, people also bring up things like, oh, I've been a dancer my whole life, so like that's important to me. But what I find is that it really like allows people to open up about what's important to them about and like the impacts of their identities and their marginalizations. And I mean, like, I understand that it is easier for marginalized people to speak to me than it would be for any of my white colleagues. Like, I totally understand that. And I think that white practitioners also need to be talking about race. I think it's harder. And honestly, I can't really empathize with the white experience when it comes to being like a white therapist talking to like people of color about race. Like it's not something that I could give advice on necessarily, but like what I can say, like, for example, like when I'm talking to, as a non-Black person, when I'm talking to my Black clients, there's there's still this understanding that there's a cultural difference, that a gap that I have to understand, and then we can work through together. I think as long as we're not dancing around the issues, and I as a therapist am opening the door, because I can't expect my client to open that door. It is my job to do that. Then I feel like it is creating a space in which my clients feel comfortable to explore. I do a lot of identity exploration in my practice, and I think being able to be honest with my clients about my feelings on white supremacy and colonialism and the ways that those have like negatively impacted them, it is powerful for a therapist to say, look, the things that you're going through are because of these systemic issues. Have you thought about them? Let's talk about them. And if we don't name those things, then we never get to the root of the problem, because I find that white psychotherapy is often centered around the individual as the problem. But often that's not the case at all. So like I try to really decolonize my work a little bit in that way, and I'm still decolonizing. I think I always will be, but I think that is like the beginnings of how I've started to do so.
Well, that's just beautiful. First of all, that there's an invitation. And that's just like really gentle. And that's a beautiful approach to have with people. And yes, decolonization, lifetime practice. Like, it's nothing that comes easily. It's not, that's not a, what do they call it? A subsection of social work emphasis that you can pick. That would be lovely. But I just want to talk about for a second, the power of naming. And that you're allowing people to also name for themselves. That's a lot of social work, especially as a clinician. I've served as a clinician in the past. And sometimes when you would tell your client what their symptoms are and what that equals, that's when they can create that change. And that's what you're doing, is the power of naming in their identities. And that's so important, because some people haven't been given that power to name and reclaim in whatever way they want to identify. And that's really a neat way to honor them. And you're letting them be the expert. And that they're the expert in their own experience. And, that's a social work tenet, is kind of letting that client take that lead. So it is funny how sometimes therapists does kind of turn sideways, though, into clients as individual problems. Joanna, and correct me if I said that improperly.
No, that is perfect, Joanna. The H silent. I'm based out of Texas, San Antonio, Texas, to be specific. And I'm a case manager with undocumented families. And the majority of the families that I serve, they are from the Central American region, where they have like strong religious backgrounds. So whenever I do house visits, or like we're supporting him, like doing appointments, of course, a lot of conversations come up regarding like just like their life experiences and the decisions they're trying to take. So one thing that I always do is try to check myself on like the values I hold versus their own values, because I grew up, even though I also I'm undocumented, but I grew up in Mexico in the United States. So I have different values compared to them. Like, I'm not attached to like any type of like religion. I think especially because our work focuses a lot of like reproductive justice, and we talk about like, having safer sex and stuff like that. So I think whenever I'm asking them about a certain situation, I always ask them like, okay, like what are your values, especially when it comes to like sex with other people or like having consent? Because like my version of what a relationship might look like, or how I engage with sex, is very different compared to them. And I don't have to push my values on them, because like for them, they might be waiting for marriage, and that's completely fine. Like, I'm not gonna hold a space of judgment or like shame, especially because I feel like there's been like a white feminist wave where we think like, okay, sexual liberation is for everyone should do it. But for me, it's like, no, that is only for specific people. Some people do value like waiting until marriage, or like not having sex until it's like a committed relationship. And that is a value that I have to hold for them, and not judge them, just realize like we're on different, we just hold different values. So I think that's one thing that I always try to do, is making sure I'm asking them what their values are and I respect them, instead of trying to like I said, shadow what I think it's the best, or just because I have a unique experience compared to them.
That's really great. Letting people center their own value systems. And that, sometimes that's a really tricky part of the work. You know, and there are other people out there, perhaps even colleagues, who really feel like you should be teaching them a different way as opposed to letting them hold their space. And that's about being non-paternalistic, right? And I really love that you said that.
I can share something I've been thinking about of like how to seek, and also I think I was also trying to think of ways I've known how others have seek to honor like communities and populations as well. So just like examples, also because I'm still in school, so I don't, it's kind of a hard balance of like I think I have done it, but also I think like I've seen other people do it. I think in my personal experience that I've had like therapists who will relate with me very much using like Black vernacular and like not correcting me when I like say something that like might be deemed like not correct. And like instead they kind of just like flow with it and just like go with me and like laugh with me and like joke with me, and like it's like we're sharing in community even though the focus is me. And I think like that has been something that's been really powerful, is that like they are themselves and they're not expecting to be anything different, and that I am myself and that I get to be all of whatever that is in this space. So yeah, I was just thinking about how important it is that like I also show up as myself, because I think that invites people to show up authentically as well and share in that space with you to like seek and honor and tell you like, hey, here's what I know about this, here's what this means to me. And I can tell you like, oh great, I have no idea what that is, like please tell me more because this is what it means to me. Or if we're in a clinician space, like maybe I won't say like what it means to me, but yeah, just thinking about like how I look for myself and like what that does when you show up for clients and the people we serve and things of that nature.
And you said something totally key there about not feeling judged. And that's so, so important. I'd say that's something that bonds the BIPOC community, is feeling judged. And that could be whether you're a clinician or whether it be the client. And creating that place where people are really free to not feel like you're correcting them, and that you can be you and you can speak the way you want. You can use the vernacular that's comfortable with you in whatever way that is. And that's fantastic. And I once that we just, sorry, I'm going to go off because no one's, you better raise your hands if you want me to stop. Just saying. I had a client when I was doing clinical practice, and they would start the session playing an instrument for about 10 minutes. That's how they felt. And so we kind of ended up like booking them towards the end so that they, people, the walls weren't that insulated. But that's just how they had to express themselves. And that's like just no judgment. They were expressing themselves in the most genuine way they wanted, which was through music. And it was really wonderful to communicate with the client like that and use that other expression and just asking them, how come they picked that piece, or just letting them guide that conversation. So I love it. For some reason, I'm seeing like a bunch of people coming in. So Felix did say, yes, Rox, I totally agree. I'm not a blank slate therapist. I think social workers can really utilize our personalities and identities in order to show up for our clients, which, that's, power to the recent graduates who are thinking like this, because that is something right happening in social work education. I know, back when the dinosaurs were roaming and I was getting my social work education, it was all about cutting off who you were and, keeping that wall and that distance with your client. And when I have interns, I'm like, you can't do that in Indian country. You put up that wall, you are not going to be able to build a relationship with your client. And, you're especially if you're in a tribal community that's super small and everybody knows each other, That's literally impossible to do. You have to be authentic and utilize that authenticity in your praxis. So, you know, that's great. Thank you for saying that. Stephanie has her hand raised.
Hi. Yeah, I think I just kind of wanted to echo on a few things. I really love, I'm like so grateful that you shared that, Rox, because I think that's one of the parts that makes me enjoy my work or helps me enjoy my work so much more. I actually work with the Indigenous community. So not only do I work with them, but I work alongside them. And that was like a dream for me. I didn't like, there were so many times that I didn't think I was going to get to that point throughout school, but I did. And now I just like, I like revel in the fact that I get to do that every day. Like that's amazing to me. And but what I was going to say was, I think, and then just speaking again, because I do work with the Indigenous population, something that I try to be really intentional about is like talking in like spectrum and not talking in polarity. Like, and it's especially, I think it's important, it's an important reminder too for my coworkers as well, especially those that are non-Indigenous. I really try to reiterate, like we've been doing a series of graduate intern interviews, and pretty much every interview, there's always just a question about, you know, being an Indigenous person, like, you know, working with Indigenous people. One of the things I often find myself saying is that like Indigenous identity happens in spectrum. And like, we're grateful that we get to witness that spectrum alongside people. And going back to the no judgment comment, I think in that way we serve our Indigenous community and honoring the fact that our identity does happen on such a spectrum. It looks so different from person to person. So being able to kind of support people and like, you know, finding their place on the spectrum, like where is that? What does that look like to you? What does that sound like to you? Like that's beautiful work. As an Indigenous person who will, up until this day and probably for the rest of my life, you know, will walk with those 2 feet, one in one world, one in the other. And we're constantly finding where that common ground is. Where can we build bridges? So there's that, the spectrum versus the polarity. And then like asking people, now it depends on where clients are, I think, but some I have found that I can really ask, you know, like where has your healing been? What has your healing looked like? And we've been able to, you know, have conversation around ceremony. And does ceremony look like, you know, the ceremony that happens once a year, or the ceremony of waking up in the morning? What's your ceremony in the morning, you know, to walk into your day? And so this like idea around ceremony, a lot of people will mention, you know, like as long as we invite that, and even some people are just, you know, very open and will share like, yeah, like I see traditional medicine people, but I also go to the doctor, you know, like I performed the ceremony when I got sick, but I have the ceremony for when I feel good. So it's like acknowledging the way in which people heal. And I find that like our elder population really, really, really appreciates having that conversation available with us, because a lot of times there is that expectation you're walking into a sterile environment, you're going to have a sterile clinical conversation. So you can just see it in people's faces when they're like, oh, like I had that space, like here it is, you know, she gets what I'm saying. So I just wanted to offer those couple of things, but thank you.
That's so great. I totally want to use that about talking in spectrum, not polarity. That like you made my evening. That just really hits on so many different levels for me. I love that. I think that's just wonderful. And that's real. That is, you know, honoring your population, that they're diverse. And they do things, everyone does things differently. Just because it's one population, people may have a name for it, doesn't mean that everyone's exactly the same. And I think that's sometimes the danger of, historical trauma, is it kind of gets like, oh, you've had historical trauma, and so I know you've experienced these things, and let me treat you a certain way because of that. It's like, we have historical joy. We have historical strength. Or my tribe didn't do that. That didn't affect me. Working here with Paskoyaki, they didn't go to boarding schools. That's not part of their histories at all. Being Hopi, we didn't go to war with the US government. That didn't happen. So, all these things that people are expecting from us, I love that, talking in the spectrum, not polarity. Thank you. Thank you. That's like a gift for this evening.
Yeah, I kind of was having a thought and like was wanting to hear from folks. I know we've been talking about the way like we serve communities and the way we show up with honoring expertise. And I kind of was just like curious on like, what does it actually look like to dismantle the system with our own tools and like not the master's tools? And also if folks like have some language around like the master's tools in general, because I think like that can be such a big concept. And I think we can like know like, okay, I have an idea of what this is. And sometimes it's easy to identify our own tools to say like, I know what I use, and I know what I do, but maybe not like meshing them together. So I was wondering if folks had kind of thoughts on that. Like, what does it look like to actually dismantle the system with your own tools and not the master's tools? Or maybe like what has that looked like for you?
I think one of the conversations that I was having was how we can dismantle using ourselves and our culture and identity and diversity was actually embracing more cultural humility than cultural competency. I feel like sometimes with cultural competency, it's in regards to becoming an expert in another culture, whereas cultural humility, it's more about self-reflecting on ourselves and learning about the other culture. And I feel like if we could implement more cultural humility than cultural competency in organizations and agencies, because we as an organization, we do annual trainings every year, and that includes cultural competency. And so I think switching that up to cultural humility would be very helpful in regards to how we can step one, dismantle. So
yeah, thank you, Kelly. I saw Danielle put in the chat the cultural competency is saying I know who you are, and then cultural humility is tell me who you are. And I thought that was like really powerful and like could be said out loud. And Danielle, I don't know if you have like other thoughts. Don't want to put you on the spot. You definitely don't have to.
No,
But
that's okay. I just think about that because I think having gotten my social work degree a long time ago, along with the other person who said she got hers many moons ago, I come from the era or have learned in social work that you are the expert. So you're the one that's telling people who they are, what they are, how they should be, and offering more of your opinion. But I think cultural humility to me, as I have gotten older, I just feel like now I'm able to hear who people are, and I want to know who they are, and I want to hear from them who they are. Like I'm so far away from being the expert in any situation that it's now like a shared experience. I think something like what Felix was talking about is more of a shared experience so that we can learn together. And I don't know how the old way ever worked, but for whatever reason it did, as far as, professionals being the experts, but I'm so happy to move away from that and just allow people to be who they are. We talk so much about self-autonomy. We talk so much about self-actualization, but really, if you look back over our history as social workers, we really didn't do a very good job of that. And so now with the introduction of cultural humility, it gives us an opportunity to really be who we say that we are, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, definitely. I'm glad that I kind of put you on the spot. I have no regrets. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Felix, I see your hands up.
Okay, so something that I'm thinking a lot about, like literally the master's tools, right? As social workers, we use those tools that are created by and for white people. Like an immediate example I have is CBT, right? It's an evidence-based practice, but the evidence that we have is mostly about white people, and it doesn't apply to so many other cultures. If you try to apply it to someone else, you can racially gaslight them. Like the amount of times that my clients have told me the experiences about their white therapists racially gaslighting them with CBT is just astonishing. I think that, you know, we really need to be careful about how we use the things that we're taught in school, right? All like the CBT is the thing for therapists, right? And I tend to not even use it very much because I find that it's actually not that effective for the populations that I'm working with, which are not white cishet people, like, sorry. And then another thing that I think, you know, I talk a lot about clinical stuff because that's my background, but I think all social workers need to really analyze the tools that we use. That something, when I think the master's tools, I can't think of a better example than the police, right? That is the master's tool for criminal justice, for, you know, for the order in society, right? And social workers work very closely with the police in a lot of ways, and often act as police as well, right? So like as social workers, we really need to understand, is this intervention actually helpful for my client? Like, are the police actually going to help? And, you know, not all social workers are abolitionist social workers. I personally am, right? And I believe very firmly in anti-carceral solutions. And I understand that not all social workers are there, although perhaps I wish that we would all be there, right? But I think that it really comes down to like, how are we going to achieve liberation when the police were started as slave control for the enslaved people who are escaping, right? Like it's ridiculous to think that something that started as that can be successfully used as a tool of liberation. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I could probably go on and on about abolition, honestly, but I feel like I personally feel like social workers really need to think about that, the way that we are, you know, repackaging our own oppression as tools for our liberation doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, but it's the last line for me. I'm like, okay, I just need a second to think. Not because I don't get it, but because like repackaging our own oppression and then giving that like, yeah. You touched on so much. I think I was just having this conversation with someone about how police started as bounty hunters. And I was like, this system is literally imprisoning people because they're poor or because they're marginalized or because, you know, whatever else you want to add on there. And just, I was talking to someone recently too, and they were telling me how pull yourself up by your bootstraps was created as a negative statement. Like that was never created to be positive. It's literally impossible. Like if you literally think about the statement, it's literally impossible. And how we like use it or is used in society to like dehumanize folks, to like, why aren't you working hard enough? Why aren't you working hard enough? Like, I don't know the last time someone's pulled themselves over a fence with their bootstraps. Like, please point me to a person. Like, I would like to see it happen. And just thinking how like, sometimes that plays into social work, or even thinking like how we will not teach like macro really in some spaces, but we also don't want to be in the same system. Like it almost seems intentional to like not teach about the way these systems are working, because if you don't teach how systems are working, then of course clinicians and folks who want to do macro are not going to actually understand the system to dismantle the same system that also is social work. Like if we're not really working to not have a job, then like your work, like so many thoughts. I saw, I think it was Beatrice, raised your hand, but then put it down. You don't have to speak. I just didn't know if you wanted space, would like to take space. And if not, that's okay. And if anyone else is wanting to touch on the master's tools and like how we use our own and what the tools are, anything people are feeling or wanting to speak on. Yeah, you're not wrong. Quote Felix.
Yeah, I have to go. Thanks, everybody. But Felix, you said it all. I mean, you just preached the good word. There's nothing else. How do you follow that? So thank you for that. That gave me a lot to think about.
I see Lauren saying a sense of urgency and everything is an emergency. I work in healthcare. I'm not sure if you wanted to expand on that, if you are someone who faces racism or not, but if so, expand on it in chat if you identify as white or don't experience racism every day, but would love to hear more about this and like what it kind of looks like in that arena if you feel inclined. I feel like I'm putting people on the spot tonight, just a tad. I see Jessica shared social workers working ourselves out of a job is only encouraged as part of managed care or short-term support. Yeah, definitely. I feel like sometimes it can sound scary to say like you're gonna work yourself out of a job, but I think it sounds scarier to me for people to stay oppressed and hurt and not in peace. And because then that means I have to stay. Like if you are, then I am. And I think I stand by that of like, if anyone is still oppressed, then I'm not okay either. Like I'm not in the clear. I think we have, a long way to go for each other as a community, which I think is a testament to this space as we come together as folks of color and just think like we are in community. How do we do better? So thanks for sharing that, Jessica, and bringing that. Also, Melody, definitely agree. A town hall and abolition. I support it. Also, I don't know if any of the facilitators have any thoughts too.
There's actually something that's happening in Phoenix right now that's been talked about, and it was about how they wanted to ban critical race theory in schools. And so that's kind of been an issue that we're working with. And the person that has presented it to the Senate is also running for like the school superintendent for like this whole community. So she'd be overlooking all the education system. And so that was something that a lot of, BIPOC individuals, indigenous communities, and it's just a lot of, diverse schools we're talking about how that would, like, why we're taking out the history of what's happening when we were talking in the sense of that. So any teacher that they suspect or they feel is educating on critical race theory could get their license revoked or they could get fined for that. So it's gotten super intense, and I think it passed. So now it's going to the next level. So that's kind of like what we're facing here in Phoenix.
That's actually going on all over the country. At board meetings, you're having people. You have books now in the libraries. Been libraries for years, being taken out of the libraries, no longer allowed, prohibiting certain books, you know, so when this, whatever type of hysteria first started, I said, you know what, okay, what's going on with white folks? What's going on? Why don't they want these books or the teachers to teach about history? What's going on? It's because their kids are going to them or will go to them and say, well, how did this happen? Did Uncle Jew, because you know they have history and connections and things. And so all of a sudden the person who's been looked up to, the truth is going to be coming out. And I think that's this is like a truth serum that's going to be happening. And they don't want their children to know the truth of the history of perhaps their families or just all together. Because things that have been done to folks of color in particular, the atrocities, I mean, it's just that we're still here today. It's amazing. We're still standing. Everything you tried didn't work to try to get rid of us. And so now you have the slave patrols, which are the police now in this day and age, going and just killing folks of color. The last one was a young man sleeping in his own house. They did a no-knock warrant, walked in, he's sleeping under the covers, and they killed him. So the things that have been done, the truth needs to come out. But what you're doing, what these teachers who I've watched on TV are afraid to speak truth now. They don't want to talk about history. Because that's what it is. The CRT is the history that they would tell about us. And they sure in hell didn't do a good job about that. When I was growing up, I'm a lot older than most of y'all. And they did not do a good job teaching history. They taught the same thing all the time for Black history. Now, with Latinos, maybe Cesar Chavez may have been talked about, but not many Latinos spoken about. Asians, I don't remember. Filipinos, nope, I don't remember. So they pick and choose what they're going to share and about which group. And so this is just a game. I think people of color, this is the time to really come together along with allies and really like what's going on in Colorado, you said, I believe, coming together, going to those board meetings together and speaking out against what's going on. Because right now it's going on all over the country. But we can't get paralyzed as folks of color. We got to meet together. We have to plan and we need to be there telling them, we don't approve of what you're doing. Not on our watch. No. Sorry, but this CRT thing's really, it's just so ignorant. People don't even know what they're talking about with the CRTs. They don't even understand. But get the people together. And y'all go down there, get the organizations together. But there has to be folks speaking out against it because it's just going to slide. They've already reached, the first stage has already been accomplished, right? The first vote for it. I think you said that. And so the next, what's the next phase? Whatever that phase is, it's like stopping them, nipping it in the bud. And this is a time where we all have to come together and just stop the stupidness about, oh, I don't want to be with Black people. I don't want to be with Latinos. That's bullshit. Come on, we need each other now. This is about our kids. This is about them taking out books, about our experiences. Be they very slim, but it's about our experiences still. I'm sorry I cursed, but excuse me. But we can't sit around and just watch it happen. We can't. I don't even think that's what I would raise my hand for, but that's all right.
No, thank you for sharing. And also, I mean, speaking for myself, speak your truth in whatever language you use.
That's right.
I see some are sharing our liberation is bound together,
That's
and that
right.
also many local school board meetings still live stream, so very easy to attend. That these things are to some degree accessible. I'm not going to say fully accessible because accessibility is not where it could be, and that's a whole other topic, definitely. Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts or feelings, anything coming up for them? If anything shared, welcome all voices in the space.
Well, I know it's like beating the same old drum, and we talked about it last town hall, but the master's tools are the nonprofit industrial complex. And, you know, it's tricky. And when I hear people who've responded today, I hear a lot of people who are independent, private practice, and, you know, they're able to deconstruct, to decontextualize the work, to act in ways that are decolonizing, supportive of community. And the nonprofit system in social work does not allow that. Yet the entire social work school experience is to get you to go to nonprofit, like that's just a given. And so to me, one of the master's tools is the nonprofit, that social workers belong in a nonprofit. That's true social work there. And I find it so aberrant. And, you know, the grants and the donors that you have to, and the language you have to use for that. And, you know, it's just awful. And so, yeah, that's my little piece. And I'm sorry, I think like if you go and look through the tapes, you could probably like do a little mix tape of me like nonprofit, nonprofit.
Just to talk about that, not for profits. So there have been not-for-profit organizations in many communities of color in particular who will get grants, but people aren't, it's not getting better. The community's not healing. They have, a lot of times you have in these nonprofit organizations, they're working with people of color, working with our folks. But you walk in there, it's mostly white people. They don't have people to talk the different languages, to respect the different folks of color who are actually going to that organization. And it's just, so my thing is, are they helping our communities? And if not, and I said this a while ago at one of these, you learn from the master's tools. Now it's time to do our own thing. We have the degrees. We have the knowledge. I know it's fear-based, so we're like, oh, do we really want to, can we do this? What about, oh, I don't know. No, the time is coming. Time is coming, it's past, because we're doing what our parents did in regard to having that safe job. Now, I'm not gonna lie, so did I. But for this next generation, we need to start looking at different ways where you're going to be able to start agencies coming together, working together, dealing with the issues that are taking place in our communities, so that the healing can really start to begin on that level. And I'm talking about, when I say healing, I'm talking about soulful healing. I'm not just talking about here. I'm talking about soulful, healing the soul, which will come out through the body and the mind, the body and the spirit. Because we know what our people need. We know when we go to that house and that mother or that person comes to the door and they're so happy to see you. because you look like them. And they understand. You understand what they're going through. And you're respecting them. You want to hear what it is. Has this happened before? Tell me, what did you do in the past? You know, we're asking them questions with respect, calling the mother Miss whatever, not by the first name when we walk in. Because we know how we've been raised. And so I'll just say this now and then and wait for the person who comes through that says, Dawn, I started looking at, but I need some more people who wants to just start looking. Let's see, how can we do this? Because it can happen.
This is what Melody and I call Indigenous silence. It's the time where we process and reflect.
Yeah. It's like the power of silence and just sitting, just kind of thinking about it. I was having a conversation in class recently where, and I don't know if other students are experiencing this, and if you are, you know, of course, feel free to share, but I'm finding a lot of us are not as hopeful like about the system and that it can like actually change, even though we're getting the good degrees. Like, even though we're sitting in the classrooms, even though we're doing these things, even though we might come to, you know, these rallies and these protests, and like we hope, you know, like we want it to, but it's like also as you begin to learn the system and the way it has worked, you realize like this is the same, you know, you almost feel like, dang, like this feels like the same thing. And someone had asked me recently, like, do you actually have hope the system can change? And I was like, it's the only reason I wake up. Like, if I stopped believing that there was like even an ounce of hope, like I don't know why I'm gonna drop out of social work. There's no reason to continue if I don't have hope. There's no reason to do these papers, these midterms, these exams. There's no reason for me to be doing it if I don't think that there's hope. And I think sometimes people like think it has to be this big monumental thing, and it would be great. I would love for like just a sweep of like change to just happen. And actually I think Melody was sharing this of like, you hope can just be one step closer, and hope can be just looking at that your generations before you have come so far. So what does it look like just to take that one more step and pass your baton and like have the next person do what they need to do, and like that be the hope. And I think that was encouraging for me to hear. I think I didn't know that I needed it at the time, but, and I think I'm just wondering for other folks, what, you know, what does it look like to keep hope? What keeps you hopeful? Why do you continue to do social work? You know, like where is the, we talk about joy and strength, but like where's the hope for folks? I'm just curious, and also wondering if other people are needing to hear this hope of like, no, there's some of us who still believe that like change is gonna happen, it's gonna come, and like I may be one step in the direction, but one step is better than no step. And like if we all keep taking that one step, like we will, you know, make some progress. But yeah, just wondering how folks feel. Oh, I see Betty. there continues to be no substitute for the practice. And I think might be response. Jessica was saying, I'm stuck by how much more silence there is in this space compared to the white dominated spaces I'm used to. Yeah. And then Betty sharing, there continues to be no substitute for the practice. Yeah.
I feel I do have hope. I still carry that hope. I think we as human beings evolve a lot, whether it's in our physical or mental capacities, we're able to always overcome. And we have a resilience, you know, especially within our indigenous cultures. There's a huge resiliency in regards to all the challenges and injustices that's happened. And from my experience as, you know, a one-on-one case manager, if I could help guide a family to change, whether it's in the way they communicate, the way they behave, you know, in the way they respond to services on a more positive level, that gives me the hope that change is possible, transition is possible. And, you know, if I could help a family transition more positively, one family, then there's hope for a community, you know. And we always felt in our indigenous communities, with all these social challenges that we're having, all the atrocities that's been committed against us, that we were told by those in authority that this is the way it's always going to be now. You know, that we have you, you're going to assimilate, you're going to colonize, and we were always told this, so we kind of just rolled with it until one day, all the kids were like, "Oh no, we're not going to do that." And so now, you know, we're being more vocal, and if we can continue to model that, the advocacy, you know, the social work, the being able to stick up for yourself and stand up for what's right and what's not right, if we can continue to do that and show our kids, then we definitely can see change. And I feel like that's what's happening right now. You know, Stephanie had mentioned earlier that, you know, she, being indigenous, we've always had social work as part of our culture. We just didn't have a name for it. You know, it was always just us being a community, taking care of one another. Until social work came about, and then there was a label for it. But we've always done that. We've always taken care of our own. And if we're able to show that, it always starts with the children. You know, we need our children are our future. They're going to lead us. And within at least my culture, within my family, it always starts with the children. And, you know, if we can't change adults, then we can definitely start with the kids. And I feel like that's also my other sense of hope, is that I'm a mother and I'm teaching my daughter, and she's a part of this program, this group that's about, you know, the environment, it's about leadership. And they have such amazing goals. And it's called the Eagle Truth Indigenous Youth Program. Very awesome. And it's a way for her to integrate being indigenous, science, as far as, you know, the ecosystem goes, and also how to implement that to be a leader. And one of the conversations I was having is, you don't need to be an adult to be a leader. We need to show our children how to be leaders, what leadership looks like. And if our kids can join these type of programs, if our kids can listen to the things that we're saying on what social justice is, what equality is, and understand that passive aggressiveness is not going to fly anymore when it comes to, you know, people like us, from those that are superior to us or feel that they're superior to us or have that authority. And I feel like right now my daughter's getting that sense, you know, when Ms. Dawn was talking about, you know, police brutality on, you know, the Black community, African community, and she's seen that. You know, she's like, hey, I thought this was what, you know, what's supposed to happen. And, you know, and it's like, you know what, it is supposedly. But if we could teach those to our children about what's right and what's wrong, that's kind of where my hope starts. To have a little person that's depending on me to show her and guide her. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening right now. And so that's kind of where my aspirations are from the littles. I call them littles. Their little attitude.
And just, Kelly, just going off of what you said, what I believe, watch the children, the littles, as Kelly called them. I believe they're the warriors that have come down today. They're the ones that are speaking up. They're the ones who are taking a stand, and you start showing your daughter and her friends about social justice and what they need to do. They're going to take it and run, because these are warriors. Watch how little kids speak. Just watch them, how they interact. When they believe in something, they believe in it, whether they're 4 years old or higher. So there's some special souls down on this earth right now, I believe, from what I've seen. And all you have to do is just show them. But when they start going to the board meetings, you can't chastise them because you show them what to do.
It was funny. My professor was talking about his 3-year-old, and his 3-year-old, and he's like, I thought she'd be a little kid still, cartoons and Barbie dolls and all of that. And he asked her what she wanted for Christmas, and she's like, I want Alexa. And so now, like, this Alexa is like, Alexa, is Santa real? And what was it, like, TV rots your brain? I guess that's what he was telling her. She's like, Alexa, does TV rot your brain? So it's like, our kids are learning. She's only 3 and she's already talking to Alexa,
Yeah.
and half of us can barely figure out how to send like pictures to her. so like, you're right. Like, our kids are listening to how they speak, listening to what they say. I was just telling Melody earlier, like, I used to think I was cool. And I used to think I was down with the kids until I started talking to kids now. And I was like, okay, I'm not as cool as I thought. I have no idea what these slangs are. And I was like talking about Britney Spears, and they're like, oh, that's so yesterday. She's so old school. And I was like, old school and old school. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Kelly. I see someone shared, we have an army of retired social workers who can get out and go to school board meetings, to all meetings where decisions are being made. That change is slow, but there has been change, not as much as we would like. And they stated that they are also older, and that when they were a child, they didn't see like Black people holding office, and they were not leaders in the community that they could identify with. And just kind of pointing out that that is changing, that has changed. And just kind of ending on that of like, what's our part to play in this? How do we continue to use these tools and move us forward? As Dawn was saying, like, the time is now. There's no better time than to start right now. Maybe tomorrow, because we might be tired, but yeah, if no one has any last thoughts or words or anything they would like to share, we will probably close out for the evening, but I'll give some silence again. And if no one speaks, then we'll try to close it out.
I'm feeling inspired, and it's a lot, but step by step, one step at a time. Get with like-minded people and see what you can do.
I just want to say that I know in this profession, a lot of frustration and stress tends to just kind of follow us. And I just want you all to know that you are all appreciated, that you are all doing it the best that you can, that nobody knows our work better than we do. Nobody knows our community better than we do. and that I appreciate you all, and I'm glad that I'm able to share this space with you, and to always just never forget that you are golden, that you are appreciated, that you are, most importantly, very important to yourself, to your family, and to your community. So that's just what I wanted to let you all know.
Okay, I see Lauren saying that they appreciate the space. Thank everyone for sharing their wisdom and collectively and individually impacting the profession and our nation. Thank you. Thank y'all for coming. We will end it here. And yeah, thank y'all for being in this space, as Kelly said. Please, if y'all need anything, reach out. There's a peer support group coming up, which should be in the emails. But yeah, thank y'all.